Good evening and welcome to a night of joy, of song, and of reunion. My name is Kim Moore, and I have the honor of singing in the Consolidated High School Choir, graduation class 1993. No, just kidding. Graduation class 1975.
And I'm Carol Staten Clark. You might have known me as Staten, also class of 75.
Let me just say that Jim Matheny, there are many, many things that could be said about him, but that his energy, his talent, and dedication shaped the lives of many people. Many who couldn't be here would echo that, and I think we'll hear from many tonight who had that experience. It's an opportunity for us to enjoy old and new friendships and celebrate the gift of choral music and look forward to the purpose and the passion of a much beloved man through the lives and voices joined in harmony. For those that didn't get to know Mr. Matheny, he enjoyed over 80 years on planet Earth with us and impacted every place he touched with the help of a beloved wife, Connie. Amen. Yeah. In addition to his contributions to the lives of young singers and to communities with music, he also influenced a lot of people in growth and faith and education and learning about friendship. We'll hear from those people and different comments on that later this evening. We all have special stories and memories of him, and we'll look forward to hearing those later. Jim treasured his memories of all of his careers in Texas high school choir programs, as well as others, but to mention a few: Marshall High School in Marshall, Texas, 1962 to 1968, Allen Academy in Bryan, Texas, 1969 to 1973. Boy, you guys moved a lot, Connie. And then A&M Consolidated High School in College Station, Texas from 1973 to 1983. He felt honored to work with young singers whose talents and achievements were recognized at the district, region, and state choral levels. Once in an international competition, I hear. I don't know if whoever was there with him is here tonight. Yes? That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Okay, so we have representation of that. But also he showcased voices young and old in many community programs.
And known for his wise counsel in expecting and attaining great high standards and achievement, he nurtured a lifelong love of music and hundreds of students along the way. Often remembered as a gifted choral director, he also was a teacher and mentor of how to love life fully, honestly, faithfully, and lovingly. In Marshall, he was known for his personal leadership in promoting civil rights also during a tragic period of our history. Jim also served as minister of music to the Methodist and Presbyterian churches for much of his life. He co-founded and conducted several community choruses, which we'll talk about even a little bit later, but enumerating them here: the Bryan Children's Chorus, also I guess now known as the Brazos Children's Chorus, established in the early 70s, the Community Singers, established, and Kim will talk about that in a while, but now known as the Brazos Valley Chorale, Tudor Rose Vocal Ensemble in Roswell, New Mexico, and Paracomos Recorder Ensemble in Auckland, New Zealand. So all of those were initiated through the work of Jim through his life. And then late in life, he was actually even active as a public performer with the Descant Recorder. at neighborhood markets in Auckland and in downtown Oklahoma City and during worship services. So that was pretty cool, seeing him play recorder in a bunch of those places.
Yes, Jim Matheny taught me the word busking. So I got that on an international email. What are you doing? We just wouldn't do Jim honor if we didn't introduce now the person that made all of what Jim Matheny did possible, and that's Connie. So if you would please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, Connie Matheny. Connie is a brilliant writer, editor. She writes, she edits. She's a sage beyond sages. If we wanted to talk to Jim, we couldn't get to him, we talked to Connie. So we love her, and it was her tireless efforts over 60 plus years that helped all of the music impact happen for Jim. So we thank you.
We'd like to introduce the ladies that are going to help lead all of this this evening. I'll go kind of one at a time. Georgia, if you would stand up for just a moment. Georgia Cornegay was fortunate to be the first assistant choral director at A&M Consolidated High School from 78 to 80. And her job working with Jim included teaching 6th grade choir in the junior high campus, assisting Jim through sectionals and rehearsals with all the high school choirs, taking the varsity women to UIL, and teaching music theory and history at the high school. And her secondary job, she said, was to be as much of a sponge working with Jim as possible, to learn all of his skills and talents and everything he knew about choral directing. She struggled at first, like any teacher, with the job description, but she learned so much in those 2 years with Jim, and then obviously remained a friend of theirs after that. And the one anecdote she loved adding in is she's eternally grateful that they decided to take her car to the first TCDA event, and Jim didn't make her ride on the back of his motorcycle. And then next we have Janet. If Janet would stand up. Janet Allison Alphen. And Janet's had the privilege to know Jim and be part of his family during a very critical part of her life. His loving and positive influence made such an impact on her and the future of her life. She has been a teacher from 73 to 75, he was Janet's teacher from 73 to 75, and then a friend, of course, for life. She also sang under his direction, not only in high school choir, but in community singers after high school. Her great experience with the community singers was actually a huge factor in her creating the Austin County Civic Chorale back in 1985. A volunteer non-addition community chorus. And she's directed that chorus for 28 years, the past 28 years. And in fact, they were so lovely and generous to actually loan us the music that we're all using over here tonight. And also she has taught in public school and has led church music for the past 35 years. So thank you, Janet. And then we have Miss Sally Hoover-Bursell. And I must say, before I tell you a little bit about Sally, the funny thing is most everybody who knows Sally and Janet knows them as Sally and Janet, or alternatively, Janet and Sally. They kind of go in a pair. They were in high school together. They've both gone into music as their vocation, and so it's been fun that it's all come full circle, and they're able to lead us tonight jointly in directing, so that's pretty cool. Sally sang in Jim's high school choir and in her junior and senior year at A&M Consolidated. She enjoyed and flourished under his direction and with concerts, musical, all all regionals, UIL, sight reading, solo ensemble, all the fun stuff that we did in choirs. Her favorite memory of high school choir included the activity of standing up alone to sing for the class. It did a lot for the self-esteem. And anybody who sang for Jim understands that and remembers that, okay, now you sing. And he would look at you and expect you to sing, just impromptu. Sally also really benefited from the guest clinicians and guest choirs that came in, guest clinicians like Jackie, and guest choirs like East Texas State University. And it felt like it opened up a small world into really big world and big ideas for her. In fact, Jim was the big encourager for Sally to go on to music college, and she finished her music degree at East Texas State University and began taking music classes at UT Austin. And then Jim tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Oh, it's time for you to come back." And so he got her to come back and assist him at Consolidated for a few years. She taught at the junior high as well as directed the 9th grade choir, and she also accompanied Jim's choir at the high school. And she was learning from the best, how to be the best, and how to build a program, raise funds, all of those kind of things under his tutelage. And one of the highlights was the trip to Vienna that they were just talking about a moment ago, because she got to be part of that. And of course, Sally was a friend of the family and Jim's. And that was a huge part of her life and has influenced her greatly. And now if we can have the choir start going. In this first section of music, the choir is going to do 3 songs. The first one is called Bless This House. And this one is really special because it was part of Jim and Connie's wedding ceremony when they got married back on June 6th, back in 1954. And in fact, this past June 6th, just a couple of days ago, would have been 59. 59, awesome. And so this first song is really special to them. And then the second song, No Man is an Island, was a favorite song of the Marshall High School Choir. And then, of course, the third song is Night Song, and it's a women's chorus song, so you won't see any of the guys singing unless they kind of mess up. But for the most part, they're not supposed to be singing on that one, and it represents all of the women's choruses over the years that Jim directed.
That was a nice tribute and a good warm-up for a group that hasn't sung together, some of us in 30 years. So while they're processing down, we thought we'd ask to hear from some others that have created ways for us to stay in touch with the Matheny Endowment Fund. So I'm going to actually introduce Sharon Lutz and ask her to share with us about the endowment that's been set up and its benefits and how you can participate this evening and ongoing. Sharon?
I'm really delighted to be here, I represent the Texas Choral Directors Association, which is a member association for choral directors in Texas. We were really honored that the Matheny family chose to have the choral directors of Texas establish and endow scholarship fund to honor Mr. James Matheny. This, in fact, is the first endowed scholarship fund of the Texas Choral Directors, so it's very special when Doug and I worked on this effort and made it come about. Part of the mission of the Texas Choral Directors Association is to promote choral music and to ensure that it has a place in the future of Texas educational institutions. And so certainly providing scholarships to young individuals who want to go on to study choral music and vocal performance is really very much important to our association. And if we can offer scholarships to help ensure that this continues, then we're very happy to do that. So you'll find in your program this evening a pledge form, and this is a 3-year effort where we hope to establish enough money that this, with the interest and all of that, that we can continue to offer scholarships to young students studying choral music. So we'd appreciate any help you can offer. Anything will help, and again, I'm very pleased that they chose to have us help with this effort, and thank you so much for being here. I know that obviously this man was a remarkable man, and I am impressed endlessly with how many lives he touched. So thank you very much.
And so we'd like to ask 3 or 4 people who have asked to share if they would join me up here and share some comments of how he touched their lives.
Jim's influence in people's life went way beyond just the music we sang with him, because he was such a mentor and such a good question asker. That's not very good grammar, but he absolutely encouraged all of us to move beyond limitation. Move beyond limitations and know that you had choices in life, in your attitudes, and so on. And one of the things I remember him telling me absolutely that would always make me laugh, a little frustrated as a high schooler, 11th grader, is he goes, "You don't have to choose to think that." And I'm sure everybody over here heard that out of him. It's like, and growing up in College Station, I'd never heard anybody say that to me before. It's like, really? I can think something else? Okay. So it's like really opening up the horizons and thought patterns and so on. Some of the other things we all remember out of him, certainly the intensity. Who all over here remembers those piercing blue eyes and him just staring at you? And you knew you had his full attention, you had his full focus. Yeah, over the glasses. I'm practicing. I'm practicing right now. And absolutely, and you knew he was very present with you, and there was like no other conversation he was having in the world than the one he was having with you right that moment. But certainly everybody talks about integrity, intensity, energy, very contagious energy. And one of the things I'm reminded of from these ladies who are directing us tonight, because they've morphed from things that Jim taught them, but is the quick breath right as you're coming in, and the focus in their eyes and the leaning in and the being present and being right with the beat and so on. So it's fun to experience that again tonight, because I know you ladies are bringing that. The one other thing I wanted to say before I hand the microphone over to somebody else is, since 12th grade, I haven't used the word should in a sentence. I don't know how many of you ladies and men got fussed at for using the word should. It's like, that's not a word. You cannot use that. There's no should. There's a can or a can't, you know, and not very often are there even the can'ts. But that got stricken from my vocabulary back then.
Hi, class of 1983 in Consolidated High School. Just honored to have a moment to say something about Mr. Matheny. He was awesome. He was the type that would, almost like a father figure in a way. He was a teacher, but he was also that little person that would tell you, look, this is what you're going to do, and this is how it's going to be done. That's the end of the story. And you did it because you wanted to please him. Mr. Matheny gave me the opportunity to play for the choir. We had professionals to play, but he also, because I was a piano student at the time, gave me the opportunity to play for the choir as well. I was part of that group that got to go to the international competition in Austria, and so it was just a blessing to know him. He told me once, every year we had these different fundraisers, and the chocolate bars is the one that my family and I kind of like dominated. And when you grow up in a family of 11 kids, you can kind of dominate some things. And so we won every year. And so he told me, he said, you know what? You may want to consider a career in sales. I'm like, maybe not. But it was just an honor to know him. It's just been a blessing all my life. I think back about him on many, many occasions, because I am a minister of music now. So even though I don't really like do it professionally, he's still there. It's kind of like I can hear him in the back of my head, you know, when I'm working with these choirs, and it's just amazing how he touched my life back then. And so I'm just honored to be here, honored to see some of my classmates haven't seen since '83. So thank you.
For those of you who knew me when I was in high school, and to this day, back then I was a very troubled student. I was awkward, gangly, had very poor social skills. The way I describe myself is back then I was effectively insane. And so I'm very appreciative of people who not only tolerated me, but encouraged me and helped me along. The other thing, I do not belong up here. I cannot sing, I cannot read music. Never could, never will. That's part of why he recruited me. He wanted me to come in the choir. I just wanted to work on the musicals. And he said, no, you need to be in the choir. You need to audition, which I did, and did horribly. And he said, now we signed you up for honor choir for the next 2 years. My job, as I saw it, was to basically not disrupt his people when they were actually singing. But I was very lucky because I spent 2 years standing next to Greg Hostetler. Since I wasn't singing, I could listen, and it was really nice. But I couldn't take the easy way out. I still had to, if he called on me to do scales, I did scales. And again, I was horrible. In fact, my senior year, he called me to do scales, and I actually did them right. And everyone in the room turned around and applauded. I had to try out, audition for district choir. I had to audition for musicals and stuff. What I couldn't do was not good enough to excuse me from trying. There's one thing in particular, was our senior year when we did Oklahoma. And I badly wanted the part at the peddler Allie Hagum. And I didn't get it. Well, Mr. Matheny called me in his office when there was no one else around, because he gave people honest input, but he also never embarrassed anyone that I ever knew, including myself. And he told me, I'm sure there's dozens of his students who have stories of their own, but with me, he told me very honestly that part of my problem was that I had strange body odor problems, and none of the girls wanted to appear opposite me. This is one of those things that modern medicine is wonderful, because I understand now how changes in body chemistry actually affect just little things that no one thinks about. But he was 40 years ahead of my doctors. He was still, just because I was odd, just because I had these problems, that didn't change anything. I was part of his choir. And the same time when he asked me in his office to tell me about not why he wasn't casting me in the musical, he told me a story. Because I had very few friends in high school, and the ones I did, I tended to clam onto. And he told me that friendship is like a flower. It needs the sun to grow. And if you spend your whole time hanging over the flower, it will never get any sunlight and it will die. And those words have stuck with me for 35 years. And I still tell people that story. I'm still not as good at it as I like, but I at least try to be aware of it. But he kind of started me on a journey of trying to find out who I was and why I was. That started right there in his office that day with that little analogy about the flower. And he made an amazing impact on my life. And more than that, I'm appreciative because he tolerated me.
Jonathan, would you like to share something? I hear from a little different perspective, someone from the Matheny family.
I really hesitated saying anything because I'm still in kind of the blubbery mode with all these things. I get a bit choked up. But Dad was like a father to me. And it's a weird honor to hear so many other people say that he was like a father to me. It's a very strange honor. I'm very pleased that, I could share him with you and that we all had him and he was fantastic. I was saying to Julie and Chrissy earlier that I don't believe my father chose to be what my father is or was. He was driven. You're going to see a little bit of a video later, and the reason for Alexander's Ragtime Band being at the front of that is because when he was a toddler and he heard that, he started conducting. And this is before his second birthday. And every time the music would come on, he would start conducting. He didn't choose the music chose him. He didn't choose to be the person that he was with everybody. He was just being what he was going to be. Irrepressible force. Now that's enough about him. He gets all the attention. What I want to do now is I want to say that thank you, Doug. Doug, where are you? Doug made all this happen tonight. And Doug's wrecking crew, all the people that Doug was in contact with, all of you folks that made this work, and Sally. This is hard for me to say. I just want to reiterate something that Kim said earlier. When I was, actually before I was even existing, Mom was making everything happen. Dad said yes. Dad said, I'm going this direction, this is what I do. And he would just do. And Mom would go, right, so this is how we're gonna make it happen. Because we've got kids at home, we've got bills to pay, and we've got activities to do. Mom would make it possible for all these things that Dad just did. And Mom, for 65, 60 years, 59, 2 days ago, has been the force behind this for that entire time. And she's been she's on the back row right now. Very rarely on the stage, never getting an ovation. I want you to stand now and thank my mom. None of it would have happened if my mom didn't. I think you do know, how proud he would be to see this happen. How proud he would be of what you have become. To be able to watch Janet and Sally, to see Georgia, and to see this happening with you guys following their instruction and their instruction being at that level, that would be over the moon. Life accomplished. So, you've made it very successful, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
My name is Rosemary Behrens, and it's always been Rosemary Behrens, and it may always be Rosemary Behrens. I've never had the benefit of marriage or having children, but a couple of years ago I leapt into a wonderful relationship with a young woman, and I've gotten to be a grandmother to her 4 kids. I tell you that because not too long ago we were listening to the Monkees CD in my car. It wasn't originally a CD, I think most of you know that, it was originally an LP, but now they do have CD versions. And as the Monkees were singing their theme song and they came along to "We're the Young Generation," Dominic says, he's 9 years old, he goes, "They're the young generation? They're older than you." And as we were getting ready for our event today, of course, all of us, as soon as we got our music and took a little look at harmony again, I think all of us teared up the first time. We all teared up the first time we practiced it this afternoon as well. It dawned on me that I don't know in high school that I really understood the words. I don't think I really understood what the words to that song meant. It was beautiful harmony as far as the musical harmony, but the harmony of life that this song really sings about, I think that also really sings to what, I'm sorry, he's still Mr. Matheny to me, I can't call him Jim, what he taught us. And I think, especially during his time in Marshall, I think he really did get an understanding of what that harmony needed to be. And I say to all of us now, who are part of any of his choirs, we are the young generation, and we can continue to bolster the other young generations coming after us. I also want to tell you that I lucked out because I think my junior and senior year, I ended up being librarian for the choir. I had an off period, and I kind of got to hang out in the choir room and make sure all the music got put out and done all the right kind of ways. So I spent a lot of time in there alone with him. And I remember, I think that period was like right after lunch. And there were several times when he would be having his French fries. And he had his French fries with ketchup and mayonnaise. And I'm like, I remember at one point saying, "You're not supposed to put mayonnaise on French fries." And what do you think he said? "Who says?" And so, I think he taught us how to think out of the box long before out of the box ever came into being. And he, yes, indeed, was like a father to me. And now, John, as a counselor, I can tell you, for you to say that he was like a father to you, when we all say he was like a father to us, that is awesome. Because it doesn't always work that way. So, but anyway, that's some of my memories. And we're having a great time tonight.
Jim Matheny also helped co-found between 1969 and 1970 the Brazos Valley, what was it called then? Community Singers, which is now the Brazos Valley Chorale. So as you can see on your program, we now have selections that a madrigal group from the Brazos Valley Chorale will be performing. And we're very grateful that you would join us this evening.
Amen.
While Greg is joining us, I'll let him give a little bit of his background and the story of his song. He is 30 plus years singing in the music performance arena in New York City. He's come a long way to be with us, and it's quite an honor. Thanks, Greg.
As Carol told you before, Jim would sometimes have us sing solos, and he would point at you. Well, Matheny Finger has pointed at me a couple hours ago and asked me to sing, so I was racking my brain, what should I do? So it occurred to me that maybe I should sing something that he actually had us sing when he pointed at us, and one thing was the Ben Jonson piece, Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes. And that was the first thing I sang for district auditions, and I was a little bit nervous, like I am right now. And in the middle of singing, it went pretty well, but I realized my right kneecap had a life of its own. And it was sort of bobbing up and down and left and right, as if it, was going to fly off my leg. So at that point, I had this piece from memory, and I could probably do it from memory, but in order to avoid another recreation of that event, and don't stare at my knees the whole time, I'm going to sing with the words. Drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with mine. Or leave a kiss within the cup, and I'll not ask for wine. The thirst that from the soul doth rise, doth ask a drink divine. But might I of joy's nectar sip, I would not change for thine.
Are you ready for a little fun? A little fun. How about a visual journey of Mr. Matheny's life that has been put together to show not only that passion at work, but also to give us a few memories and laughs along the way. First of all, Alexander Ragtime Band, as you've already heard from Jonathan, was something that came out of him to conduct at almost 18 months old. So it was included in the early part of the video montage. Once to Every Man and Nation, it's a favorite song that was performed at the Marshall High School Choir, so it was selected as well. Sing Unto God, performed in 1975 by the A&M Consolidated Choir when we competed at UIL. And last, He's Gone Away, a beautiful song, also a favorite of the Marshall High School Choir, and we're going to hear all of those put to the faces, the friends, and the fun of Mr. Matheny's life. So I think our screens are dual-sided. Not sure which way we're looking.
Swing into it.
My music, the dirty crooks. Come on and hear Alexander's Ragtime Band. Come on and hear, it's the best band in the land. They can play a bugle call like you never heard before, so natural that you wanna go to war. That's just the best band what am. Oh, my honey lamb, come on along, let me take you by the hand. Up to the man, who's the leader of the band. And if you care to hear the Swanee River played in ragtime, come on and hear Alexander's Ragtime Band.
97, chorus. Letter C, orchestra. The Kingdom of This World, altos. Release on 1, enter on 2. Be there for that, okay? If you notice, I tried to throw this up to the ceiling on that 4th beat like that, so you know right where that is, and come down on it.
section of music, and in your program you see that we're going to cover 3 songs. You'll Never Walk Alone. This is a song from the musical Carousel, and this ended up being one of the favorites from the Marshall High School choir, and they sang it quite often, but a lot of us knew it, even though I don't think any of the choirs ever performed the musical. But also, the second song in this last set is Blot's The Lord's Prayer. And this also was one of the pieces from Connie and Jim's wedding 59 years ago. And so it's a beautiful piece, and I know you'll enjoy it. And then the very last song that we're all going to sing, and in fact, we have an invitation for anybody else in the audience, because lots of people sang this song with Jim. It's called Harmony. And so if by chance, even if you didn't rehearse with us this afternoon, if anybody else feels moved to come join us on the stage to sing Harmony as our last and third song of this set, please come do so.
Oh,
Let's all sing.
Wow. I hope you could feel how much fun that song is to sing again, and also to imagine there's not one of us up here that doesn't see Mr. Matheny's piercing eyes pulling every single red blood cell from our toes through our hairline when we sing that song, mainly so he said you better sing it if you mean it. And so he challenged us from the heart out to sing all we were singing. So we want to close this evening just with a thanks to the Matheny family, Connie, for the many, many years that you helped make it all possible. For Jonathan, who came so far. For Doug, who catalysted all of this and whose driving effort and generosity made this possible. To Janet and Sally, to all of the people who made it so far to come here. So thank you to all of you. We want to at least remind you of a couple of things. There is a program that, where is it? So raise your hand. We have a program that if you were part of the choirs, that, or anyone, to document that you were here this evening, we want to give the family a copy of a program that's signed by all of you. So, raise your hand one more time. We'll have this floating around. We'd like to make sure you get a chance to sign it. Also, for the record of the Matheny family as well, to stay in touch with you regarding the endowment. If you didn't get a chance to sign in and provide an email or at least a way to contact you, we'd like to make sure you do so. And I think that sign-in information is still in the back. Also, most important, there's food left over. The Matheny's would also like to encourage you, if you have a need or an appetite for some great barbecue, they certainly don't want to carry it all the way to Oklahoma. So if you would please help yourself to what's left out in the kitchen, and please don't give them leftovers to take across the border with them. I don't know if there's anything else.
Thank you, Kim.
And family who have traveled far, who are tired but are also grateful for the music, and to all the musicians and those that performed. We want to say thank you. And one more thing.
Before we go, Kathy, would you get up and lead us in a little ditty?
Oh, yes. I forgot.
All right.
It takes a lot of skill to have done this. So as you know, last night, the director has a first name. Ready? My director has a first name, it's J-A-M-E-S. My director has a second name that won't fit in this mess. I want to see him every day, and if you ask us why, we'll say, 'cause James Matheny has a way with S-I-N-G-E-R-S.
Godspeed, and may you keep on singing. Good evening.
The reason we called him Mo was because some of those rowdy guys that he got into choir and molded them, they called him Matheny.
Mo what?
Matheny.
Matheny, for
But
mold.
the other thing was, because our choir room was unair conditioned, unlike the band hall, and he would get up there and get into his directing, and his hair would fall down in his face like Mo. Larry and Kurt. But the main thing was that because of Mo, we did have an insight. He made us learn that music and what it meant. And that was a hard time during those times of Marshall. He was a very brave man, and he taught us a lot. And the integrity is outstanding. But it was a very affectionate thing to call him Mo, and a very respectful thing. No man is an island.
He guided me, so I learned from him until the very end, and he influenced myself, my family, my children. One thing he taught me was that you don't practice. He taught me that one of the last lessons when he was practicing his recorder. I said, "Oh, are you going to practice?" And he said, "No, I'm going to perform in your living room," you know. And so every time he played was a performance. I was very thankful to the ladies who directed tonight, because had Jim been here, we would still be rehearsing, and the concert would have been postponed a few weeks until we got everything right. So I really thank those ladies who put this together, and my deepest love goes to the family, because you know I adore you all, and so thanks for letting me be a part of this. Thanks.
Thank you for doing this. I just want to say that I'm still involved in music today, and if it weren't for Mr. Matheny, I wouldn't be, no doubt, because I would just let it drift away. I don't know what I'm saying, but I appreciate everything he did for me, and I appreciate everything that you all did for today. Thanks.
It's a prank on Jim. I wore these socks.
Now, why is that meaningful to Dad?
Well, at one time he was rather upset with me for wearing white socks to where we needed black ones for the formal wear.
My name is Joel Hall. I was in consolidated class of 1976. I was only with the choir for the senior year, but I was in band the entire time I was in school, and I'd known Jim through band because he could substitute direct now and then. But my senior year, when I was in choir, he became a very important person in my life. That year, I was the lead in our musical, which was The Music Man, but I will tell you right now, The Music Man was not me. The Music Man was James Matheny. Describing Jim is difficult because he's bigger than life. He really was one of those people that was just bigger than life. The closest I've ever seen in art or in life to Jim was in the movie Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams' character was teaching a class, and he would go to extraordinary lengths to inspire passion in his students. That is exactly what James Matheny did to us. He inspired us to be our best, to go beyond what we thought we could do. His talent was to see into you and to see possibilities in you that you did not know were there. And then he was courageous and honest enough to look in the eye and tell you that that existed in you. And then he demanded that you reach for that. And he brought that out of you. And that is a great talent. I loved that man like no one else. A year after I graduated, on an application, I was asked who was my hero. And my answer was James Matheny. And he still is.
Sing away the hurt and fear.